On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, we play one of our favorite games here on the podcast. It's What's More Likely. I pose a situation with a couple of possible outcomes, and me and my guest determine which we think is the most likely. It's very simple. It's a very good time. And today's guest rocks. It's Crina Mustafa of the Parleh. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks so much for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1252 of Locked On Raptors for Friday, September the 30th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of Post Touches, my new Substack. You can go and subscribe. We'll have posts starting to flow out next week, so please go check that out. And you can find the show for free, and it's all available on all your favorite podcast apps. So you can go subscribe, follow, rate, and review, all that good stuff. We're also on YouTube. You can hit the big red subscribe button over there and support the show that way. And as well, important reminder, today is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and it's really important that you are educating yourself if you are not yet educated on the horrible history of residential schools in Canada. There's a link in the description below to the Downey Wenjack Fund, which is a wonderful charity which supports the survivors of residential schools and all the aftermath. And I highly recommend you go check it out. Also, there's a Raptors tie-in for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation as well. Casey Bannerman, in conjunction with the Indigenous artist Mike Ivel, otherwise known as Big Nish, have done a special jersey in beautiful Indigenous art in concert with Fred VanVleet. You can go buy it. I'll put the link for that as well in the description as well, because it's important. All the money there, $165 for the jersey. It's all going towards the Orange Shirt Fund and making sure that we're all educated and keeping up on the stuff that Canada has not done so well in the past. All right, let's get into it now. On today's show, we're playing What's More Likely with Crina Mustafa of the Parleh. Crina, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing great. Very happy to have you on the show today, and love playing a little round of What's More Likely. This will be a recurring thing throughout the season for sure. We did it a few times last year, and the response was, I would say, pretty warm. And so we're going to dive into three different What's More Likely situations on today's show. We've got stuff regarding the back end of the roster and, guys who might find their way into the rotation. We've got one as well, I'm forgetting the ones I've laid out already. We've got about the sort of outcome for the season, playoffs, non-playoffs, second round, all of that. That's going to be there as well. But we'll start things off, Crina, with a question. What's more likely? Fred VanVleet is named an All-Star, or Scottie Barnes is named an All-Star in the Eastern Conference? What do you have as being the more likely of those two potential outcomes?
I have got to say Scotty. And the reason I'm doing that is because even though I'm not saying that Fred won't deserve to be an All-Star again this year, but I feel like last year we just tried so hard. Like we feel like we've scraped him into the All-Star game. And so I just see it like it's hard for me to see it happening again. And I think with all like the buzz around Scotty taking that year 2 leap, I feel like all that support, that All-Star support is going to go behind him this year. And it's just a gut feeling. It's just in terms of development. If he does make this crazy leap this year, then I could see him making the All-Star game as opposed to Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, I think that's a well-taken point. I think I would also lean Scottie Barnes here as well. Just basically, you have to think about the All-Star game, not so much in the way you think about the All-NBA teams, where it's like, who are the best players? We have to be very regimented about how we determine this, use the numbers, use the season-long impact and all of that. The All-Star game is very much a popularity contest, whether you like it or not. The voting happens. That's all popularity-based, more or less. And then the coaching additions are also, in a way, a popularity contest, just with a strange, very singular faction of people who you're trying to impress and be popular for. And I would say, actually, that for the coaches, Fred VanVleet's probably more of like a coach-ass pick than a second-year player in Scottie Barnes. Kind of along the lines of Kyle Lowry was for so many years, where it's like, oh yeah, that dude who annoys me all the time and is really good and his team always beats ours. Yeah, of course he's an all-star. That kind of feels like Fred's best gateway into future all-star games. But I could totally see a voting surge for Scottie Barnes, like we've kind of seen in the past. DeMar DeRozan's been voted an all-star starter before. Pascal Siakam was voted an all-star starter before. Vince Carter, for like a half a decade, led the entire world in all-star votes every single year, despite playing for an expansion franchise, more or less. We know that there's a push to be made if Raptors fans really put their minds to it and Matt Devlin really commits himself enough. And so I think Scotty's the more likely guy to get voted in. And I actually don't think either will be named as coaches' replacements or coaches' picks this year. And so for that reason, I think I got to go Scotty. You would agree, though, Pascal Siakam, probably the most surefire all-star on this team?
Oh, yeah, 1000%. I think just seeing him get kind of back to his level and even better again last year. So I think, I'm very, very excited for Siakam to play this year. And I'm very excited for him to be at all-star level.
In hindsight, kind of wild that he wasn't an all-star last year. I know the missing the 10 games at the start of the year was the reason for it, but just the body of work over the course of the season, really, really good stuff from Pascal Siakam. And of course, All-NBA, all that. It's kind of bizarre to look back at the All-NBA guy not making the all-star team. I want to ask you about Fred and his all-star candidacy, Crina. Would you say, I'll just pose this sort of opinion I have. I think it's actually better for the Raptors if Fred VanVleet's numbers are not all-star numbers. Do you agree with that at all? If so, feel free. I can expand upon it if you'd like, but I want to give you the floor first to see if you think that claim is sensible or completely bogus and out to lunch.
So I will need you to expand a little bit. What do you what is your thinking behind this?
Okay, so I'm not saying he's going to go average Derek Fisher numbers or anything like that, but if he comes down and averages 15 or 16 a game, maybe he's at 8 assists, but his 3-point shooting numbers, his off the catch numbers are way up in terms of the frequency. He's kind of running the offense and working off of guys in addition, as opposed to kind of being the guy who has to create so much and is the play initiator. You know what I mean? I feel like if his numbers take a hit because he's on the ball less, that's actually a good thing for the Raptors on the whole. But hey, maybe you're someone who thinks Fred VanVleet should be leading the team in shots because of the pull-up 3-point shooting and all that too. That's a fine position to take. But having given you more context, am I crazy for thinking that if Fred VanVleet's numbers fall back, the Raptors might actually be better off?
Oh, I don't think it's crazy. Actually, now I understand a little bit better. I think it's a matter of what's going to be more important to the team, right? Because statistics, you can look at statistics all year round. The all-star statistics aren't necessarily going to matter to your team's performance. So if Fred goes off the ball more, like you said, and he's able to contribute in a different way, to me, I think of Sabrina Ionescu in the New York Liberty in the WNBA, where she moved. So she was that primary point guard. And she was having a lot of pressure with with bringing the ball up the floor and things like that. And then the Liberty got a proper number 1 during the season, and she moved to that 2 spot. We want Fred to move, and all the pressure was taken off. And even though she wasn't shooting all the time, and it was just completely different, it became much more valuable to the team. And I kind of see the same thing happening with Fred this year. So yeah, I don't think it's crazy at all. I think the way you frame it at first, you're like, huh? But then you take a second to think about it, and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't just a clickbait kind of tweet,
Yeah, we do lots of clickbait here on the podcast, but that was not an example of it. So the last one here on the All-Star thing. This is going to be, as it always is, a question on our annual over-under spectacular with Vivek and Sahal in a couple weeks' time. How many players will make the All-Star game for the Raptors? We usually set the over-under at 1.5, or depending on the season, 0.5. What would you say, if you had to just guess a hard number, how many Raptors make the All-Star game this year? What you got?
Yeah, I'd say under 1.5. I think if one Raptor makes it, I think that's pretty realistic. I feel like going for 2 is a little bit, I don't know. I'm not confident enough. And I do all the betting picks, so I'm comfortable with taking the under.
This ain't the mid to 2010s Eastern Conference where you can stumble into the entire Atlanta Hawks being on an All-Star team. It's a little more loaded. It's gonna, I think, it's gonna be one of those situations where it's like, well, I guess everyone kind of has to have one, and then we'll
Yeah, the
give
East
two
is
to
just
the
a little better
Celtics or
this year,
whatever.
you know?
Yeah, it bums
Just
me
a
out.
little.
It's not great. I keep on trying to poke holes in the Celtics and the Nets and all these other teams. Might not do any good. They're probably going to be very good and very annoying. We're going to continue on here. We're going to get into our second what's more likely conundrum situation of the show. We'll get to that in just 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at betonline.net, your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info this season. You can find the latest developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, analysis, and injury reports on every single NFL game before you put money down on Sundays. As always, BetOnline has you covered. They've got live betting, they've got casino games, they've got up to the minute scores, everything that you need to have a good time while you're wagering and to be the informed wagerer, which is, again, the thing you want to be. You can't just be throwing money at stuff indiscriminately. That's how you lose all your money and have no fun gambling. But if you're going with BetOnline, you're going to enjoy yourself. Don't do what I did at the Toronto Blue Jays game this Tuesday. On Tuesday, I was just like, all right, I'm going to bet on Aaron Judge home runs. I'm going to bet on Aaron Judge not hitting a home run. I'm going to bet on the Blue Jays winning. I'm going to bet on the Orioles and the Guardians both winning. It was a nightmare. I lost all of my money because I did not take myself to BetOnline first to become the informed wagerer. Head to betonline.net yourself today, and to learn more about the trends in the action that's all over there. BetOnline is where the game starts. I could see in the background Crina's puzzled look as I detailed my horrible betting strategy. As a Parleh employee, I apologize for being so embarrassing and bad at putting money on sports. It's just not what I'm good at, Crina. I'm good at clickbait. We've already established that, not gambling. Let's get now to the second what's more likely situation for today's show. And this one regards the back end of the rotation. Which player is most likely to be a rotation player by midseason? Justin Champagnie, Malachi Flynn, Dalano Banton, Christian Koloko, or Juancho Hernangomez? Crina, you got to pick one. Who you got?
Oh my God. This one was so tough. I've literally been racking my brain for hours because there's so many different ways that you can look at it. And if I'm gonna pick one, it has to be Malachi. Okay, I'm going with Malachi, and I'll explain why. And
Please explain.
Well, it's like a 1A, 1B, 1C kind of situation with these guys. But my explanation is that if we want Fred to have a proper point guard beside him, or maybe someone as a backup, you got to try Malachi. Like, it's got to be Malachi season. You have to give him minutes. You have to see what he can do. Whether or not it's going to work out, I don't know. But if I'm going with a guy to choose, it's going to be him. My gut originally was going to choose Koloko, maybe Juancho, just in terms of size and like what you need. I mean, the Raptors have size, we know this, but you know,
it's just like their thing, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I can kind of see one of those guys too becoming part of the rotation. So it's really hard to choose just one. I'm more comfortable leaving Justin off of the list. Instead of choosing one person, you know. Yeah.
Malachi Flynn, all right. I think for me, like, you can make the argument for all these guys, right? Like Christian Koloko, they realize, man, what a wonder it is to have someone over 6'9" on this team. We just got to get that guy in there as much as we can. Could totally see that happening. I think it's going to take a little bit longer for him. I think he might be on, at the very least, like the Norm Powell trajectory of G League for a while, then maybe come up mid-season, which I guess is the question here. But I think it might be a bit more, just a lot of guys in the way. You mentioned all the size they have. There's just a lot of guys who are going to soak up minutes at the 5. And hey, by the way, as we record this, it came out that Khem Birch revealed that he was playing on a torn meniscus all season long last year. Said that over at Raptors Media after practice today. And that's bad and makes a lot of sense when you think about how Khem Birch played. He's not 100% just yet, it sounds like, but he's on his way back. They've cleaned up the meniscus thing. So maybe that means Khem Birch has a bit more of a shot at a regular rotation spot in the front court. Precious is going to play there. Scotty, OG, Pascal are going to play there. Thad's going to play there. Just feels like there's a lot in the way of Koloko getting there. I think for me, I'm going to do the guy you left out. I'm saying Justin Champagnie. I am on the Justin Champagnie bandwagon. Like, I've totally been in the bag for him for like a year now. And I just think the three-point shooting that he flashed in the G League last year, of all of these guys, I think I believe in him being a shooter the most. I haven't seen it enough with Flynn yet. His career true shooting percentage is still under 50%. It's not good. Banton, I don't think has much of a three-point stroke, despite the number of weird bank shots he's accomplished so far in his young career. Juancho might have that. I worry about Juancho on the defensive end. It just feels like Champagnie does everything the Raptors want defensively, and also maybe has a bit of a stroke to work in there as well. Not to mention the offensive glass and the way he kind of hunts the boards, the way the Raptors really seem to want their guys to do. I don't know who it comes at the expense of, which is, I guess, maybe a good question. It's probably going to be because someone gets injured. That's the way it goes, unfortunately. But we're in a perfect world, Crina. Nobody's hurt. It's sunshine and roses. Everybody's happy. All their tendons are intact. But we get to midseason and Nick Nurse needs to make a change. Of the guys who you would pencil in to be the bench rotation right now, you got Precious or Gary Trent. You've got Otto Porter, Thad Young, Chris Boucher. Is there a guy in that four who you think is the most likely to potentially get excised from the rotation if they are going to keep to a typical sort of 9-man group the way Nick Nurse has typically tried to do in the past?
I'm not gonna lie, I forgot we had Thad Young on our team. Like the first time you said his name, I was like, "Oh my god!" I completely
I think this is the second time in 2 weeks where someone has forgotten one of the tall. I think someone forgot Otto Porter was on the team earlier this week. It's just how it goes. There's too many guys of the same size and play style. It's hard. Masai, please, we're dying out here.
I feel so embarrassed. Oh my god.
Please don't. I forget guys are on the team all the time. Malachi Flynn is the one for me. But carry on. Thoughts on who might be the one to potentially get removed from rotation if things don't break right for that guy?
So from this list, or from like the
bench
we already have?
Sort of assumed 9 that we expect right now. Maybe it's Scottie Barnes. Maybe he gets benched.
Wow. I don't know about that.
I think it's probably you're looking at Precious, Boucher, Thad, and Otto as sort of your contenders there. And like, tough company. They all seem like they're pretty entrenched and should be entrenched, but who you got is maybe the most likely to lose their job.
I think I really, because it really pains me to say this because I've always seen his potential, because I know what Boucher can play like. We've seen it, but we've also seen what the struggles look like, and I think when Boucher is struggling, that kind of hurts the team a little bit sometimes. So maybe him, maybe Otto, just because of we just signed him, so we'll kind of see how that fit goes. But yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard for me to see one of these guys actually dropping out of the lineup, especially with this backup that we have considered the reserve. So I don't know. Like you said, even so, since we are in a happy world, I don't really see anybody dropping out. But if Boucher struggles, possibly.
I mean, I think maybe I'm guilty of just assuming Chris Boucher is the world beater he was in the last 4 months of last season.
Hey, I'm on that train too. Don't get me wrong.
He could be that. I kind of expect he's going to be that. But, there is that sort of specter lurking of, what if Chris Boucher gets a little taste of wanting to take too many shots again, or gets 3-point happy again, or whatever? That could be the worst thing that happens, is the first 2 weeks of the season, Boucher is bombing triples, and then all of a sudden it's Tampa again, where it's it's Chris Boucher time, baby, and things get dicey. I don't think that's going to happen, though. He changed the way he plays pretty substantially over the course of last year, which was pretty cool to see. I think probably my pick here would be Thad. And I don't think Thad's going to lose his job. I should say this, this is a hypothetical situation. But if you're laying out the sort of things that take place to see him removed, you sort of maybe view his size and defense as okay, well, they have a million guys who do that. And if his 3-point shot is as wonky as it can be and has been in the past, I mean, he had his moments last year. He kind of, started to hit the corner threes and whatnot down the stretch, and that was really exciting. But if he does have a stretch where he goes, I don't know, 2 of 20 from 3 over the course of a handful of games, a week's worth of games, maybe Nick Nurse says, okay, we got to try something else here, and puts my boy Justin Champagnie in for that 3-point shooting.
Oh, there's the agenda. There it is. There it is.
Exactly. Thad it's actually just good veteran leadership, just clearing the way for the younger guys to get their spot. That's the way to look at it. No, it's tough though. I mean, it's one of them good problems. Oh no, there are 9 guys who should be firmly entrenched in the rotation. Whatever will we do? If one of these 5 other guys we've talked about here at the back part of the roster is going to make it in there, it's probably, I would assume, as some sort of injury catastrophe replacement type thing. Hopefully that doesn't take place. We're going to continue on. I can tell you what's going to take place for sure is the third segment, and we're going to dig into the third what's more likely. And also, as I've been doing ever since Media Day and the lead up to the season, whenever I have a guest on, I'm going to put them on the spot with a very hard question at the end of the show. I just told you about this for the first time, Crina, so get ready. We're going to get to that in just 1 second. But before we do that, just a reminder, Locked On NBA is your daily whip around the NBA. It's available on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube for free, so please go subscribe there. Rotating cast of hosts each day of the week. It's a must-listen during the NBA season and in the preseason as we get set for tip-off later this weekend. All right, Crina, let's go to the third what's more likely. This one, big picture stuff, end-of-season results. What's more likely? The Raptors miss the playoffs outright, so out of the top 8, they lose in the play-in or worse, or they make the second round of the playoffs. Loaded Eastern Conference, I think these are both kind of on the table, as much as we don't want to admit that missing the playoffs is on the table. You get into the play-in, and things can go poorly and turn things bad very quickly. But what are your thoughts here, Crina? What's the more likely outcome? The missing of the playoffs completely or making the second round?
I think I'm optimistic because I think it's more likely that the Raptors make the second round. I don't even with all the moves, I'm still getting to a point where I've been trying to do preseason rankings, and I think I have like my first like top 4 pretty locked in. I think I have like Bucks, Celtics, Philly. I'm forgetting one team, maybe I think Miami. And then that's where I'm having trouble thinking that there are some other teams that could kick the Raptors out of that top 8 or top 7. And so and then I think depending on who because this is framed as missing the playoffs or making the second round, that's why I say it's making the second round, but depending on who they would face in the playoffs, it would be debatable. I just don't see them missing the playoffs, especially because they're definitely going to make the play-in. Like, I don't see a situation where they drop out of the play-in. And if they make the play-in, then they're probably going to make the playoffs as well. I just have too much confidence, I guess, in this team. Like, I don't think they're a contender by any means at all, but I think they're good enough they have a good core and they're good enough to make that next step.
Full disclosure, when I wrote this hypothetical, I almost made it miss the playoffs or make the conference finals because I kind of thought making the second round was too easy an answer here. And I am with you. I think the second round is more likely than missing it outright. I can't imagine they're going to finish lower than 8th in the East. Like, I think they're definitely better than the Bulls. Definitely better than all the crap below the Bulls in the East, the Wizards, the Hornets, the Knicks. Like, all of these teams depress me deeply. And so the top 8 feels very likely, which means there's a home date in there somewhere, whether it's in the first or the second of the play-in games. And I just think if you have a play-in game at home, you stand a pretty good chance of making it through. I don't think they're going to miss it outright. I also think, I, like you, am pretty optimistic about the team. And I don't think that they will be considered one of the 4 best teams in the Eastern Conference. Like, I think there's lots of other teams with more playoff equity and all that, but they could have one of the 4 best records for sure. And that gives you a leg up matchup wise of getting into the second round. They also kind of can build upon what they learned in the playoffs last year and all that stuff. I don't think it's totally off the table. I think it's, one of the more likely outcomes for the season. Like, I would say probably first round exit in noble fashion against a very good team is what I would predict here. But, it's not dissimilar to last year, but maybe a little bit closer, a little less dispiriting going down 0-3 and all that. But I second round is probably the second most likely outcome to me, frankly. I think they stand a very good chance of getting there, and it would be very exciting to see that sort of forward progress for the team as well. Let me ask you the conference finals thing, Crina. Like, they're not one of the 2 best teams in the East. I think we can agree on that, but like, had I made this, they miss the playoffs or make the conference finals, which would you have chosen of the 2 options?
I would have said none of the above.
You would have gone the coward's road, and that's fine.
Too far on the spectrum, but then I probably would have said miss the playoffs because I'm not confident enough that they would make the conference finals. No.
Yeah, there's some monstrous teams in the East.
Yeah.
I think that'll be one of those. They snuck in because the bracket broke perfectly, like the Blazers in 2019 or the Hawks in 2020 or 21. I don't see them becoming like a clear conference finals team this year. But hey, stranger things have happened, I suppose. Maybe Scottie Barnes is a fire-breathing dragon from start to finish, and there's just nothing the other teams can do about it. I want to ask you now, Crina, now that we have come to the end of the show, I've been doing this thing with guests leading up to the season, just kind of trying to get an idea for what people's sort of strong opinions are going into the year. So I asked you, Crina, it can be a contrarian take. It can just be a thing that you really, really believe that's not so contrarian, but you think is true. What is your strongest Raptors opinion going into this season?
Oh, man, what is my strongest Raptors opinion? This is a good question.
I've had a lot of fun throwing it at people. It's been a blast.
Yeah, I was like, I wish I had more time to
especially because I don't tell anybody about it beforehand.
Okay. So it has to be for this season?
Yeah.
Or just in general?
It could be like big picture, like involving the players who are on this year's team if you'd like. Yeah.
I don't think... Okay, it's like kind of a two-parter. I don't think you have to blow up this team in order to be a contender. I think they're like one or two pieces away. Okay. And I think that keeping OG should be your top priority. I think I believe in his potential. I believe in what kind of a player he can be. And as long as he's healthy, I think he could probably be the Raptors' most important player.
For the second straight day, we've had OG propaganda in this segment.
Really?
Louis Zatzman said that he thinks OG will prove himself to be more valuable than Scottie Barnes this year. I don't know so you think there's a chance he becomes like the most important player on the team, like ahead of Pascal, Scotty, and Fred?
I think there's a world where that happens, yes.
Ooh, I like it. Spicy. What is it about OG that gives you such belief? And look, I should say, I think OG rocks. I've been saying all along this entire summer, we seem to be forgetting that players who are otherworldly defenders who knock down 40% of their threes and can score off the ball or on the ball if needed are really valuable, even if maybe he's not going to be a Kawhi Leonard one day. Not many people are. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know if I share the same level of belief that he could climb to that level of importance on the team. What gives you such belief and confidence?
Yeah, so I've seen like flashes of what his aggressiveness can look like, and I think that can be translated to being that guy that gets you a bucket consistently. And I think when he realizes, my one gripe is like, OG, you have to realize how strong you are. Like he can bully his way to the rim. Like he can get himself past like any defense. And so I think once he realizes that, and I've seen like small flashes of it, I think he can become like super unstoppable. That's like something I've always thought. We'll see whether or not it happens. But yes. Look,
I think the pathway there, like the style of play you're looking at for OG, because of the strength, is like, this is going to sound insane, but we're late in the podcast. Most people have probably tuned out. It's fine. We get to drop these little nuggets of weirdness. Like Zion light is kind of the vision there. Like just capitalizing on the fact that nobody's as strong as you and just using that unbelievable strength to your advantage. Obviously, like Zion's got a lot in his bag and he's got a lot of wiggle to him and he's probably got a better handle than OG has. And is a little less robotic with it, better footwork, that type of thing. But like, if that pathway that you've kind of laid out for OG is there, like that's kind of what I see. But also, Zion can't defend worth a lick, and OG is one of the 10 best defenders on the planet. So, pretty horrifying player. Like, and I should say, Zion light, like Michelob Ultra compared to a regular beer. Like it's. You know, he's not going to go average 30 points a game on 75 true shooting or whatever ungodly stuff Zion's done when he's been healthy. But that type of player who's just such a brute strength force that you can't hope to contain him, that's possibly on the table. I think that's a high-end outcome for him for sure. I like this take, Crina. This is a good, strong Raptors opinion to close the show. We love it. With that, we will round out the episode and close this bad boy up and close out the week of the podcast. We'll be back again on Monday as we'll take stock of the first preseason game against the Utah Jazz in Edmonton on Sunday. That's going to be a ton of fun. Crina, where can people check out your work?
You can follow me on Twitter at KrinaMM, and make sure you're following the Parleh on all social medias, including YouTube, so that you can catch Court Time with me every Friday.
Hell yes. It's Friday when you're watching or listening to this probably. Now go over and watch Crina's stuff because it's the best. Crina, rising superstar. We love having you on the show. Thank you so much for being here. For me, you can find me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. Subscribe, follow, rate, and review the podcast on all the usual podcast apps and on YouTube. You can also subscribe to my forthcoming Substack, Post Touches, a Toronto Raptors blog. It's just going to be Friday posts essentially, where I kind of sum up the week and write things out, and also there'll be some odd game notes and things in there. It's free to subscribe, but if you want to throw me a few shekels, you can subscribe for $5 a month as well, or $50 for the year, and that'd be appreciated too. It's nice to support writing and people trying to make a living in this here content game. I can't believe I just said that. Whatever. We'll round it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go make your second listen of the day. Locked On Blue Jays, as the Jays head into their second to last series of the season against the Boston Red Sox this weekend. And Ben and Matt over there are doing a great job documenting the road to the postseason. And with that, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Enjoy the preseason game on Sunday. Bye-bye.